Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how you can control the DFAM using an external sequencer or Midi if you use some type of device like this one, the Korg SQ64, as a Midi to CV converter. Now there's lots of other hardware options for Midi to CV converters, such as the hex inverter Mutant Brain, or you could use a sequencer like the Oxy One, or any number of things. But today I want to kind of explore or explain the concepts behind this so that you can apply it to whatever hardware you have. So this came from a discussion on Reddit, on the Moog subreddit, where someone was asking about controlling the DFAM with Midi through the Mother32. They said, I'd like to bypass the DFAM's own sequencer and play its individual steps with the keyboard in the order I want. As this is possible with Soniclass MIDI adapter for DFAM, but is this really not possible only via the Mother32? I did do a video on the DFAM thing. I'd highly recommend checking that out because that absolutely does what this person was asking for. But one thing I suggested is that you could think about running the DFAM using an external sequencer, because that gives you, it changes up the workflow, but you can essentially get the same thing as choosing out your steps on the sequencer, but it also gives you a whole bunch of extra functionality. So I wanted to just talk about it. So first of all, when we think about the DFAM sequencer, it's very, very, very limiting. It's only 8 steps. There's not a lot of control over it. So when we think about it, it really does 3 things for you. Number 1, it sends out a trigger for the 8 steps. So it triggers on each step. Number 2, it sends out a CV, a control voltage for pitch. And number 3, it sends out a control voltage for velocity. Now, through the patch bay, we can actually do all 3 of those things. And so today I'm going to show you with my Korg SQ64, controlling the DFAM, triggering it, providing the CV for pitch, and providing a CV for velocity. And we'll essentially create a patch and control it with the SQ64. So in order to trigger it, all you have to do is apply a gate signal. And I'm going to do that right here. We'll plug it into the trigger, and you'll notice now even when I press the sequencer to turn it on, it's not making any sounds because the gate, the trigger from my sequencer, is not triggering it. So this overrides the internal sequencer. Then I can take my pitch CV out of my sequencer and plug it into the VCO1 CV. Now, when you have pitch going right here, you have some options. You can either turn it off, or you can, if you flick it up, it affects both oscillators 1 and 2. If you flick it down, it only affects oscillator 2. So you have that same options over here. Whatever goes in here is added to whatever this selection is. So if you want it totally coming from your sequencer, you're going to turn this to off. Now, if you put it in VCO1, it's going to affect both of them, just like if you were to turn this up to the top. And if you wanted to affect just the bottom one, you can put it into VCO2 CV. So for today, I'm going to stick it into VCO1. I'm going to turn this off. So now the pitch will come from my Korg SQ64. Now, one added bonus to this is that this is quantized. So now I can really program in specific notes. Just make sure your tuning is all set, and the more you turn up these envelopes, it can affect the tuning of things. But if you want specific notes to run out, a sequencer like this is awesome to use. So the last bit is velocity. And on this particular sequencer, there's a mod out, and I set it to be the same range as the velocity on this sequencer. So this is only positive voltage. The pitch CV has 5 volts in each direction, 1 volt per octave. So that means You know, it can go down 5 octaves or up 5 octaves. That's just a massive range. The velocity is only 0 to 5. And I'm going to plug that into the velocity right here. So now, once I plug those in, they override everything except for the pitch CV that is added to whatever CV is coming out if this is selected. If it's added off, then it won't. Well, it just won't add anything. But so let's listen to what I got. So now if I hit play on my Korg SQ64, pretty cool stuff. So basically, you could make whatever you've programmed in here, you could program it into here. So for instance, if the pitch was all the way down, you would set this to go 5 octaves lower. If the pitch was already up, you'd set it to be 5 octaves higher. And you could kind of go through methodically. The specific question from the forum, can you play individual steps? No, you can't really do that. But you could take these two values and program them in at any step. So it's essentially the same thing. You're bypassing the sequencer and you can make, the sequences do anything you want. You can also make them longer. So like this is a 16-step sequence. Pretty cool stuff. And then of course, with sequencers like this, there's all kinds of different options for you can play it at random. Nice. One thing I also want to point out is that if you do this, you also have a couple of extra modulation sources, because since this sequencer is no longer modulating pitch and velocity, you can have it modulate other things. So let's go ahead and go from the pitch out to the noise. Now what's cool about that is that this pitch is not going to affect our actual pitch. It's just going to be stepped voltage to influence the noise. And now we can have it either running clock synced or we can have it running independent of the clock. So right now it's independent of the clock. Cool. And so if you wanted to make it clock synced, you just go from your clock out of your sequencer and into the advanced clock. And now everything should be all clock synced up. Let's go from the velocity into something else. So we'll go into FM amount. So there you go. That's another way you can control your DFAM I hope that answers the question on the subreddit. So it's, I guess in short, you can't do exactly what you wanted to do, but you can still control it using an external sequencer. And any external sequencer that can be controlled through MIDI, you could, have your computer, for instance, do a MIDI to CV conversion through something like this. So I hope you got something out of this. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Visit my Patreon page to support me, all that stuff. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.